This episode of the Disruption Lab is being taped in front of a live studio audience. I'm here with Dr. Donnetta Watson. Dr. Watson, you've been called the Launch Strategist. Can you share a defining moment that led you to dedicate your life to empowering Black entrepreneurs?
Yes, I can. It was the day that I found out that I had 1 penny left to my name.
Okay.
After starting my business with $350,000 of my own money, less than 5 years later, I was flat broke. And I was an adjunct professor teaching traditional business school. I was the previous administrator over the business school. And I had all this money and all this knowledge and all this education, and I thought I had everything that would make me successful. But it didn't work because there were things I was missing on the journey. And when I realized how I ended up where I was, I often say I didn't sow it, so I wasn't reaping anything. It was something that I needed to learn and something I needed to experience. But I told God at that very minute that whatever you want to do with this story, I give you permission to use it. And that giving him permission, he took me on a journey that I didn't plan on taking myself on. But I'm grateful that I'm here. I'm grateful for what I learned and what I experienced because I teach from what I learned. I teach from what I know to be true about business. And that is the difference maker for us.
What do you think is the biggest difference between what they teach in business school and what you teach entrepreneurs now?
The financial side of business. Oftentimes, the traditional business schools, and I was just as guilty, we focused on the business plan and writing the business plan, but we never introduced the entrepreneur on the financials, the structure of an organization, how to create a sustainable business model, and how to access capital, and what that journey and that pathway looks like for an entrepreneur to not use their own money. My whole experience taught me something is that I broke the cardinal rule. Never use your own money.
Right.
Use OPM, other people's money. But at that time, growing up in the church, we were taught that all debt was bad debt. And so it was not something I was interested in even learning how to do, using debt to start and run my business. I had more than enough cash, so I thought I was safe. But I learned what everyone else learns. Money goes very fast. And I woke up one day and had none left and realized that if I would have done things differently, I more than likely would have been sustainable because I had the business for almost 20 years before I became a full-time entrepreneur. And that was something that was worth learning because it has helped a lot of people make different decisions in business.
Do you feel like that's still maybe I'm describing this inaccurately, so work with me on this. Do you still see that as a cultural hurdle, that there's that cultural aspect of debt is bad
Yes.
versus the entrepreneurial piece of don't do this with your own money? Do you still see that that's a...
Absolutely,
yeah.
And especially in our culture. It's funny because I can hear our parents and older people saying, don't you go borrow any money, as if it was a crime or a sin to go borrow money. And we still feel that way because it's still taught to us that way, that all debt is bad debt. And not understanding that there is a personal financial strategy and there is an entrepreneurial financial strategy, which requires capitalizing the business and using capital at certain intervals through the lifespan of the business. We focus strictly on startup, and that's the biggest mistake we can ever make because capitalizing the business requires you to have that strategy, and it's a tax strategy as well, so we have to teach it from that principle. And then on the other side, the culture, I often challenge them and I say, didn't Jesus go tell the disciple to tell that person, go borrow the donkey, I have need of it and I'll return it? That was a borrowing strategy. Did not the prophet tell the woman to go borrow vessels from her neighbors and put oil in it? Now, he knew she wasn't going to bring those vessels back. He told her to go sell them. And did not Israel tell Egypt, can we borrow from you? We need to go a 3 days journey and pray. They knew they weren't coming back. So how can we say all that those strategies are not permissible? And that's where the misunderstanding happens in our community, because we hear that every Sunday, or we hear it on a regular basis. And we are still having a difficult time convincing our community that this is the strategy that's necessary, because your cash will only last so long, like mine did. I had more than enough cash. I could have started several businesses. But unfortunately, the business model that I started was a non-fundable business model. We had revenue generation 6 to 8 months of the year, and the other months we did not. Well, that made me non-fundable, but I didn't know that.
And when you say non-fundable, is that from potential investors or lenders or both?
Banks.
Banks specifically.
Banks specifically. If you're not generating a considerable amount of revenue every month, and you have zero revenue generation part of the year, you're non-fundable, period.
Right.
They may not tell you to your face, I will, but they won't tell you to your face, so you have a non-fundable entity.
Where in this story did the Black Mastermind Group start?
I started the organization in 2013, and at that time, I was still an adjunct professor. I was still teaching entrepreneurship, working with students. It was a global organization, and I taught students from around the world. And I had an open door policy at my business. And I found myself spending a lot of time with entrepreneurs who would call and say, can I come and talk to you? Do you have any time that I can meet with you? And then having the opportunity to find out what their problem was and talking them through what they were facing, the similar thing I was facing, but realizing how many entrepreneurs were out there at that particular time and had no support system. And so that name came to me, create a mastermind group, before it became popular to be a mastermind group. We are a traditional mastermind group who focuses on mindset development. Success has particular principles aligned with it. And unfortunately, our community really doesn't know what success looks like. We have very few models that we can see what it looks like, feels like, smells like, tastes like. We don't have that up close and personal. And when we can create that environment that we can really see success, we can model after it, because exposure is a powerful tool. But that is an arena that we have a lot of people, and I'm just going to tell it like it is. We have a lot of hustlers. We got a lot of hobbies. We got a lot of hookups. We have very few businesses in our community. Real, sustainable, entrepreneurial endeavors. We have hobbies, hookups, and hustles. And that doesn't lend towards success. And so we rarely have models that we can follow. At that time, I had 3 event spaces in the city, and people thought I was successful. And they thought I could assist them with their problems and help them to see things differently. The greatest asset I had was the fact that I had all this education, and I came out of the federal government as a management statistician. I understood numbers and systems and operations and protocol, and all of those things I had. What I didn't have was a full grasp of the money side of business. And I realized that that was what our community is missing, and what is actually causing the death of so many entrepreneurs' businesses today.
So you've referenced the community a few times. So can you discuss the impact that your Entrepreneurial Resource and Training Center has had on the local community?
I think we've had a great impact. The program is very intense. And first of all, we teach the urban core entrepreneur. And we're not just in Kansas City, we're across the nation. And we teach entrepreneurs from any city, state. We've had them in our program from Jamaica. We've had them some in Ghana. We've had some students from the Philippines. And what we teach is business is strictly a financial endeavor. But we don't teach what that really means to run a business from a financial perspective. And we teach all of the competencies an entrepreneur should have. Most that come to us, first thing they say is, I wasn't good in school with math, and so I'm not going to do good. And they already have canceled themselves out. And my philosophy is, let me teach you how to learn, because there are things about the learning process you've not been taught how to learn. And once we can teach you how to learn, then you're going to be able to navigate through the process. Learning has to do with the conscious and subconscious mind doing the things that it was geared to do. When we put in our subconscious mind the things necessary to problem solve. Because most people don't know everything we hear, see, taste, touch, and I always forget one. What's those 5 senses? One of them I always forget. But everything is stored within us. And our brains are just a computer. And the computer was actually created on a pattern of what our brain's capabilities are.
Right.
Our brain functions that way. And if we understand how to utilize this tool that we've been given, the more you put it in there, it's in there, the higher it resonates. So all you have to do is read it over and over again. You don't have to force yourself to learn it. Store it inside of you, and it will come forward when you need it. That's the missing element to learning. And the majority of our students come in just paranoid about math. I teach old-fashioned business math, you know. I came from that era of when business math was taught, but it isn't being taught today. So most people don't understand the computations, the formulas, the process. They don't understand anything about the financials. So that's what's missing for entrepreneurs today. And when they leave, they're proud of themselves. They're shocked that they learned it. Oh yes, they've had a night or two of crying, but they got it done. And so it is an experience to see them evolve and then be confident in what they learn, that they feel that they are capable to go out and start their business. And that's how I became the launch strategist, because most people don't know how to start. And if you don't start right, you can't remain right. You start wrong, you're gonna stay wrong. And so launching businesses the right way, and most people do not know there are formulas to how you start a business, when you start a business, and when we can get them structured and started correctly, they are very sustainable. We've created 9 millionaires on this journey, and I'm waiting to hear from others. They call me and say, okay, I'm there, I'm at $1 million in revenue. And I'm saying, well, you're not done yet. Because you spend 1 penny of that money, you're no longer a millionaire. So keep going. Yeah. But we found what works, and it does work, and we see the results.
How do you define an entrepreneur?
An entrepreneur is someone who has been given a particular gift, talent, and ability, and they have learned how to take that talent, that gift, and that ability and create not just money. We have mistakenly said business is an exchange of goods and services for money, but we missed the second half of that. It must produce a profit. And so a profitable endeavor that is sustainable. That's what I define as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. In your experience, what do you think is you maybe have answered this, but I'm just curious if there's a different perspective on what do you think is the greatest misconception about entrepreneurship that is in the community?
It's easy, and you just need to get out there and do it. And we hear that, and we see that. And that is why in our community, businesses last 18 months. And that's because that's how long your cash lasts.
Right.
And I would love to catch people before they quit their jobs, because you can do so much with that W-2 and the right strategy to leverage your W-2 and leverage your cash until you have produced enough money to start at a safer point in the marketplace, and then use other people's money to undergird what you're doing until you're able to run. We find people decide on Friday they are going to be an entrepreneur, on Monday they start. No plan, no strategy, no money, no team, no mastermind group. You know, you have an internal and external team. Those external team members are the people that will help to ground you and mentor you and develop you on the journey. And so they just jump out there. And I often say that I can't wait to meet Steve Harvey, because he did that whole segment one day after the show about jumping out there. And whatever God has called you to do, just jump. And, you know, black folks started jumping like hot beans. And so everywhere I turned around, I started a business. Oh, I quit my job and I started a business. And I'm like, oh my God. You're not ready.
You think that's because we've glorified the entrepreneur in a
Absolutely.
way? Yeah.
We don't tell the truth. Everybody's living that life. Stacks on stacks and racks on racks, you know. make it rain. I mean, everybody's doing that on social media, and it looks glamorous and glorious and it looks like, okay, they're just an average person and they have all this money and they were successful, so let me jump out here and try it too.
Right.
And what most people are missing, the majority of entrepreneurs in the marketplace today came into entrepreneurship as an employee. They came out of an employee position in an organization and came into their entrepreneurial journey with an employee mindset. And so they didn't create a business, they created a job. And so when I asked them, why did you start the business? I wanted to work for myself. And then I stopped them and say, and so you're still working? Because that's all you wanted to do was work.
Yeah.
You didn't want to own anything. And so you didn't create a business, you created a job for yourself. How's that feel right about now?
Yeah, yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that to my core. Talk to me about the structure of your programming a little bit. So I think you've got boot camps, you've got a loan program.
Yes. The boot camp is what every entrepreneur should know about business from a financial perspective. It's what every lender, every banker in this community, and every other community wishes an entrepreneur would know about business before they started. And so we take them through this 8-week, very intense, very accelerated program that really forces them to think differently about what they're going to do. And so the boot camp is the baseline. Once they've completed the boot camp, they are eligible to meet with Lisa, who is our capital access manager. We have a Kiva microloan fund. We work with Network Kansas and Power Loan Fund. We have BMO Bank, Arvest Bank, US Bank, and please forgive me if I forgot one of you, but they're partners with us to help the entrepreneurs access capital. And once they are ready to move, we now have our incubator program. And so the entrepreneurs that will be coming into the micro mall are actually going through another level of training so that while they're running the business, they're actually attending classes. So that in 3 years, which is the period of time a person must be in business before they can access capital. And so I thank you for what you're doing over here, because that's why I'm doing what I'm doing in Kansas City, Kansas, is we can't have any more businesses in the marketplace that can't access capital. That's entrepreneurial suicide. You've got to get to that 3-year point, and then you need to launch the business. Incubation was at some time a tool that was being used, but used incorrectly. If they cannot access capital for 3 years, then you can't be in the marketplace for 3 years struggling, because that's all it's going to be, a struggle.
Right.
And you're non-fundable. So you're not going to get any capital. So we need to create another way for entrepreneurs to start on their journey. And once they graduate from the incubator, then we help them sustain in the community, and we continue to mentor them. The next level program is opening up additional revenue streams. Most people come into the marketplace with one business. Well, they come in there with multiple businesses, and we help them narrow it down. Okay, you really don't know who you are. What are you called to do? If the work that we've been given to do is in our hand, I often say there's 6 components to the hand: the palm and the fingers. The palm of our hand is the core. It's the main thing. And if we give that main thing the proper attention and time, we then would be able to see that main thing is connected to 5 other business models. And at the right season and time of your entrepreneurial journey, you will gradually begin to launch other business endeavors that actually give your core customer 5 additional other ways that you can serve them. Apple is brilliant at this. They mastered this concept. Their customers do not go anywhere else for what they need. They only purchase or support Apple products. Your business should be structured the very same way. So if you are a service business, you need products. If you're a product business, you need services. Around the core business model that you have, you can introduce some additional revenue streams, but the same customer base is what you're serving. But unfortunately, we have people that have a core business model, and like they have a daycare center, and they have a hair business, they have a lawn business, they have a car business. All of those require you to grow a different market, customer base for that market. That diversification is reducing your ability to be successful, reducing the sustainability of the core business model, because you've got to grow, you've got to fund, you've got to create for all of these unrelated entities. So when we teach entrepreneurs about alignment and how easy it is to open up additional revenue streams from that core, when they operate from within that arena, that's when they become a millionaire. And then our last program that we will be launching with this core incubation group is asset development, asset protection, asset creation, management, and protection. When you are at a certain level in the business, you must buy assets. Wealth is not generated by doing a business. I'm sorry, I got to tell the truth to everybody. Wealth is not generated by running a business. Wealth is generated from the business producing an additional revenue profit to the point that you can leverage the profit and buy assets. Whatever those assets are, whether they're stocks, bonds, my preference is commercial real estate because it does not depreciate. Not residential, that's a whole nother conversation. But when we can get people owning versus renting, it changes the power position and it changes everything in their life. And it helps to perpetuate that wealth growth and wealth sustaining process. And so when we teach people the right pathway toward wealth, because you'll never work enough hours to become wealthy. It's impossible. I'm the myth buster. And so I snatch Band-Aids off people and I enjoy watching that happen. So I'm not sadist, I just love to get people to wake up. And so when we teach the right things the right way and we stop giving people fluff, we'll see more results in our community and all of our communities. We teach anyone regardless of what their ethnicity is, what their age, what their sexual preference. We want entrepreneurs to become sustainable. And that's gonna require a whole different way of teaching. And I went around the bush and around the corner and down the street to answer your question.
No, it was great. No, I learned so much. I want to go, so you referenced some of your banking partners, and we are also a Kiva trustee. I'm curious, if you were queen for a day and you were over the banking industry, we talk about training entrepreneurs and educating entrepreneurs how to deal with lenders. What do you wish the lending community was looking at that space, looking at this space differently and doing? I'm just curious from your perspective, where could they make changes to better support entrepreneurial ecosystems or?
I think that the lending community is so disconnected to what entrepreneurship really is. And I often say that to them when I am invited to their little circles. And number one, the banking hours are predominantly 7 to 3:30 or 8 to 4:30. And during those hours, an entrepreneur is working in their business. If they leave their business, that means they've lost money. So you, banker, who gets paid a certain wage every hour, regardless of what you do, why don't you come to the business and meet the entrepreneur at their place of business? Or why do you not do things after hours when an entrepreneur has the ability to come? So I've heard all of the individuals that are in this whole ecosystem for entrepreneurs say, well, they never come out, and so they're really not serious. And I have to remind them, if they leave their business, they lose money. If you leave your office, you still make money. And that disconnect between what an entrepreneur is and what an entrepreneur really needs. After the 2008 housing bubble and bust, the mandate from the banking industry for Congress to change the rules on credit to where any endeavor, whether it's business or personal, requires the personal credit score to validate if the person can borrow money on the business side. Prior to 2008, that did not exist. It is hurting the entrepreneur at the level we teach and train more than anyone else. And they were not the entrepreneurs that had over $1 million in residential real estate that walked away from it.
Yeah, they weren't causing the problem, but they got treatment.
Yes. And so that's predominantly our community that got dinged behind something wealthy people were doing, abusing a system. We have been paying the price for it. And so that predominantly statistics prove out that the Black community has the lower credit score on average. And so why would you put legislation or rules in place that's going to prevent them from accessing capital? which is the lifeblood of business. And banking industry having a disconnect from how hard that rule has impacted so many people. And a lot of people are not in debt or not bad creditors because of choice. There's systemic reasons why things are happening the way they are, but no one wants to really acknowledge that.
Well, this kind of goes back to your point about being taught that debt is bad, because one of the ways you build a credit score is by actually taking on debt and proving you can pay it. So
absolutely.
It's a self-fulfilling, it's just like this downward spiral.
And we try to demystify that whole process and bring truth to the situation that as an entrepreneur, you will need debt. It is part of the strategy of building a business. You cannot do this with cash. And once your cash is gone, you will not be able to get money. Bankers loan money to people who don't need it. And that's a rule that most people don't understand. They do not give money to people who need it. If you need money, they feel that you've mismanaged your own.
Right.
And what they give you is an investment. And so although you pay it back, they see it as an investment. And if all you do with that investment is go and spend it, you're not going to qualify for a loan. And those are the things. I was a lender and with a lending group. And my first week or two of training, my mouth was just open. And I was just like, well, who's telling people this? And at that time, back in that period of time, it wasn't okay for lenders to help entrepreneurs understand the process. And I was asked to make a decision. Either you stay here and work for us or you go work for them. I chose to go work for them because I had $5, $10, $15 million clients that were still non-fundable because they had no cash in the bank. They were operating on 98% of their revenue, which makes you non-fundable. And as long as you're not able to maintain profit based on the margin the industry says you should have, you're non-fundable. And so when they look at the numbers and they run the numbers and the numbers say you should be maintaining 28 to 30% of revenue and you have only 2% in the bank, you're non-fundable. But no one's explaining that to the entrepreneurial community, that it's not just your credit score that's keeping you from getting access to capital. What you're running is not a business. Yeah. It's a hobby, hookup, or hustle. Yeah. It's not a business. When we can get it transformed to look, sound, feel like a business, you'll be able to access capital. And so we've had over 15 students access capital with the bank. We've had students, one particular student was offered $275,000, and he was so uncomfortable about this whole process that he took only 90. He said, I didn't know what to do. And he's a $2.2 million business right now, but at that particular time, he had never accessed capital. He had never heard a yes before. And so we have entrepreneurs that have been able to sit in the bank seat, prepared, really know about what it takes to run the business. They know their numbers. They've done the work. And the lenders are now calling us saying, whatever you're doing, keep it up because your students are prepared. And we want to work with more of them. And that's why they're coming to us now. When I first started, I couldn't beg anybody to talk to me about a loan for an entrepreneur. But now they're calling us saying, we want to work with your students.
Yeah, it's good they're seeing the value of being able to prep the other side of the table to have those conversations. So kudos to you for that. I want to shift the conversation a little bit, talk about technology. So in what ways are you integrating technology to enhance the reach and effectiveness of the programs that you're running?
We will have a tech center in our facility. I believe it is so important to create the next generation of entrepreneur, not just someone that owns a business, but someone that can own a business in the technology space. And not to become an employee, learning STEM for the purpose of being an employee, but learning it from an entrepreneur perspective of how I can develop a business and become actively engaged in this next generation of technology. That's the type of STEM programs we want to offer the community, where you can own the business, not just become someone's employee, but you really own a business. There's such a different movement toward business and to marry technology, even the financial technology platforms that are being launched, all getting our country ready for this shift. In the transportation industry, it's happening first, where there's 35% of all vehicles that will be on the road by 2053 must be electronic. That's every transportation vehicle, plane, train, bus, car, everything. And along with that, the technology platforms will have to evolve to support that industry. Those are huge opportunities, but our community is not ready for those opportunities. We've been seeing STEM taught for STEM's sake, but not STEM taught with a definite goal in mind. And that's what we're wanting to bring to the community of entrepreneurs that we work with, and to help them to understand where business is going. It's evolving rapidly. And that's why I'm so opposed to the business plan, because I wrote my business plan almost 40 years ago. And the same documents is what they're putting in front of students to write a business plan. It has not evolved. Right. And business is ever changing quickly, and technology is putting different emphasis on how you can do business. But we're not talking about that, and we're not having those conversations, and we're not preparing entrepreneurs to participate in that level of business. And it is possible.
How do you see digital tools helping reduce that gap between Black entrepreneurs and access to capital?
I don't know if it will bridge the gap because of the decision maker on the other end of the table.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that systemic racist mindset is still in the lending community. For example, my niece had over $400,000 in her bank account. She owned enough land to build her own building. She has a very successful business. And we go to the bank and they tell her she's not ready. And so I had to not be just her aunt, but I had to be someone that was a lender and had to tell them, show me one young white male that has $400,000 of cash in the bank.
Did they give any additional rationale for what not ready meant to them?
They said if she takes all of her cash and puts it into the business, she won't have any left, so she needs to wait a couple of more years and build up her reserve. Okay? Yeah. Mindset.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
And she went to 4 banks. But she, very young, but very capable, very bright, very, very capable of managing. She's done something that very few adults can do, hold on to $400,000.
Right, yeah.
And she could not get a loan. And to date, she still has not been able to acquire a loan because she's under the age of 30.
Yeah, that's...
And I'm saying that nicely.
Yeah, I
There's
feel
a whole
that.
lot of parameters around that conversation, but that's traditionally, it is already perceived when we walk in the door that we are not ready for funding. And the lending communities, and unfortunately the underwriters, whom I call the devil, spend more time trying to find reasons to disallow versus approve. And that has to change. And I confront all of our bankers and all of our lenders that they have to change the way they approach the table.
Do you see that maybe digital tools have a role in removing the face-to-face, removing that bias because they don't see who's on the other side of the table? Is there an opportunity for that to happen?
This is my own philosophy. Somehow they know the ethnicity of every applicant.
Yeah.
And I worked for Social Security in my earlier years. There is something in that number that is an identifier. And it's given at birth. Because there is no way that the Black community is unable to qualify for the amount of capital and the amount of credit that the white community is. That in itself is a disparity. Yeah. Somehow it is some way they know.
Things that have to change, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about place. So you have a placemaking strategy. Tell me your views on placemaking and the power of place for entrepreneurial ecosystems and the work that you do.
As far as for place for the entrepreneur to exist.
You have an entrepreneurial center.
Yes.
You have a rather expansive footprint. And I'm curious what your views are on I think we probably share a lot of these same views about the power of place.
Yes, absolutely. In the community, for many reasons, it was important for us to do this. I am the only Black female in my city who owns 25,000 square feet of real estate. I am the only Black female in my city who who have ever won a $1.4 million grant from the federal government. I felt it was important for that visibility to be there for our community of kids, the next generation of potential entrepreneurs who already believe the world doesn't have a space for them and won't make room for them. And the life that they see every day is the sum total of their existence. It was so important for us to be visible in the city. And I didn't set out to do it this way. It landed in my lap. And it was restitution, so that's just a principle. But when we got the building, I realized what was placed in my hand. I knew that we could no longer get entrepreneurs to start businesses in the community without, number one, having access to capital, number two, having a business model that could be sustainable, and number three, creating something that was not a job. That would take more than just our training program. And I really felt that we were not as successful as we should have been or could have been because we were really not demystifying the process. And with the building and the ability to incubate businesses, we're going to totally demystify the entrepreneurial journey and what it really looks like and what it really is going to take to create something that can employ people, that can become sustainable, that can make an impact in the community, that can create change from a group of people that most people don't think have that capacity. And so that place has been a game changer for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that. Where are you at in that journey on the place?
We are praying we're going to start construction soon. Yeah. We've waited 18 months, and we are no longer going to get the construction dollars from the Department of Commerce. So now we are looking at engaging with the bank to access the capital. And something that I teach, and I at one point said, I'm not walking out my own message of accessing capital. And so I was holding tight because I did not want to do this with a debt strategy. But I have to prove this out myself because all eyes are on me. And now I am embracing, okay, we're going to do it with a loan. And so we have all our contractors lined up. I actually was doing that second look over our financials before I came here. And within, hopefully, prayerfully, a week, we will have our funding. We've already prematurely started, had to stop. So some of our pieces are already in place, but the major parts, we have about $400,000 of things that need to be done that the city requires before we can ever put a wall up to put an entrepreneur in this facility. And those things have to be done first. So we're going to do, I'm like, this is the date, and we will be open by that date. And we're going to have our entrepreneurs in their business before September.
Entrepreneurs have such a love-hate relationship with government.
Yeah. And I'm an ex-government manager, so I get it.
Yeah. I want to shift again. I want to talk about leadership. So what personal experiences have shaped your leadership and communication?
I've been in leadership roles and most of my career. I've been working directly with presidents, vice presidents, judges, lawyers, doctors. I've always been very fortunate to have those types of positions. And I've always had relationships with people who were in seats of leadership and in great seats of power. So I've been very fortunate to learn by watching leaders. And I learned about leadership. And it is not an easy role to be the leader if you want to be an excellent leader, a leader that people will follow, not by force, but by choice. That takes a lot of work. And I've watched great leaders do what they do as a part of their nature and their character. And I've watched bad leaders try to be what they could not ever be, a good leader. And I've worked up under both. That helped me to shape who I did not want to be in my career, and it has shaped who I don't want to be on this journey. When we see great leadership, then we can pattern and model ourselves after it. but most people rarely see great leaders. And in the workforce, unfortunately, there are a few very great leaders. When I became a supervisor for the government, I took that responsibility very seriously. And because I had a legal background, I tend to have been the person that was the fixer they would send out to deal with the problems. And I realized that people were just big human beings that inside was still a child. And unfortunately, without proper training, they would do things that would be injurious to the organization and to themselves. And the grace that I had was to just confront it, not sugarcoat it, not sweep it up under the rug. And I had a way of dealing with the issue, but leaving them feeling intact. Dealing straight ahead with the issue and leaving them whole when I left them. And that's important. I take that approach with everything. I am not going to lie to you to make you feel better about yourself. I'm going to tell you the truth. And we're going to deal with truth. And every leader has to. Even in this culture we're in today, we have to live and operate with truth. We got to honor our word and our commitment. We've got to do what we said we were going to do. We got to show up like we're supposed to show up. That's what true leadership is. And unfortunately, most people go on into their entrepreneurial journey as an employee. The years of training as a government manager, I was in, we call it charm school. I was in charm school every quarter, going through a day or two of training in headquarters. As entrepreneurs, they do not get that development. And you're in a leadership role and you're expecting people to follow you and you don't have any clue where you're going.
And the type of leadership you need to demonstrate is shifting under your feet as you grow your business.
Absolutely.
And you might not see that. So how would you describe your leadership style?
I'm in a different facet of it at the age that I'm in. I'm looking for people that I can duplicate myself in. I am not going to be here 10 years from now in this role. I'm a lot older than I look. My oldest daughter, 48. And so I know that my time is limited. And I want to make sure that what I create can remain. And I can only do that through other people. And I'm eagerly looking for my replacement every day, since Lisa won't take it. I'm looking for my replacement. I'm looking for someone I can seed in. And as a leader, we must always be looking for the people that we can really invest in at that level and then allow them to be them with the investment. I tell people the truth. I am not your average person. I'm very particular about how things are going to go. But I want you to be able to show me what you can do. And it's not going to be easy because I know who I am, what I am, and I know what I want. And I'm not going to accept anything less than what I expect. And that sometimes is a pressure people haven't been prepared for. Expectation that you show up and you deliver. And so I wish that we had more people on this journey that had the opportunity to be developed in some aspect of leadership before they go into entrepreneurship. And I think that that is why we see a lot of people struggling. The level of discipline it takes to be an entrepreneur, most people don't have it, honestly. And they show me that when they don't get their homework done in class. That if you tell a customer their product is going to be ready at 3 o'clock, I don't care if you have to stay up all night. I know about pulling all-nighters. I've lived that life where, matter of fact, I went to bed last night at 4 a.m. and I got up at 6. That's what an entrepreneur has to do. That's the level of discipline and dedication, that your word is your bond. And you're going to take care of what you said you were going to take care of no matter what it takes. If it means you have to suffer and you have to, maybe you'll watch what you say, but at least you'll honor your word to people. That level of discipline we do not see in this generation of entrepreneurs.
So I want to talk about the times we're living in. I have a theory I want to bounce off you, and that is that we are entering a new age of entrepreneurship and disruption right now. Mm-hmm. And that if you are an entrepreneur, you should actually should shift your mindset to see the opportunities that are being presented right now. So I'm curious if, one, you see a lot of the things that are happening. I don't think any of us think a lot of what's happening is good, but as new opportunities are being created in the ecosystem because of some of the challenges that are there.
Absolutely. I have to say, for the first time in a long time, Black people will have to support Black business. That's an opportunity that didn't exist before. It is a mandate that our dollars remain in our community. It's a mandate that we are conscious of where we spend our dollars. And entrepreneurs, I challenge them first. And because we are a $1.6 trillion, I think the last 1.6 trillion, that's how much money we spend in the marketplace. But less than a tenth of those dollars make it to Black businesses. The pressure that is being put on the community will force the community to be conscious of where we spend our money. I have the data, and I'm so wish I am a pack rat, so I don't throw anything away that I think I'm gonna need. So I have this report on where we spend our dollars and how much of our dollars go. And there are businesses that produce these products, but unfortunately, they are not known. And so the plight of the Black entrepreneur cannot change and will not change until Black people support Black business. That opportunity is shaping itself right in front of us.
Yeah, I had an opportunity to sit down with Dr. Burns-Wallace when she took the position at Kauffman, and one of the things that she had articulated back to me that was fascinating is wanting to create measurements for how long a dollar stays in a community, and the initial assessment and how illustrative that is of the problem. Is you see money that comes into a community and then just rapidly leaves versus being able to be circulated within the...
Our dollars are less than 6 hours in the community. That doesn't allow the businesses in the community to use those dollars to move their businesses. And so the exchange is happening too quickly. And other communities, the dollar can stay in that community for weeks, days, but ours is hours. And that has to change. And I have to tell you, when I was a government manager earning my 6-figure salary, I did not have this consciousness. And it just never dawned on me. And no one made me wake up to the fact that I have this spending power, and why not spend it with my own community? And so I have to be real honest, the majority of successful Black people do not have that consciousness. And so consequently, we don't patronize our own community of businesses. And we can't expect other people to if we aren't. And we have to be the first partaker. So every every Black entrepreneur that I come across, I'm challenging you. You're an entrepreneur. You need every dollar that you can get in your door. Now think about the other entrepreneur across from you, around the corner from you. They're feeling that same pressure that they're desperate for customers to patronize their businesses. We have to be the first partaker of that responsibility to patronize Black business so that our business can become strong enough and stable enough to attract other customers. And we haven't successfully done that.
As a leader and as someone who's been advising entrepreneurs for a minute, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs about overcoming systemic challenges?
The advice I would give them today, first of all, is that nothing can stop you but yourself. You are in control of how life impacts you. Life will always be lifing. You've got to make the decision how you're going to handle the impact of it. There is nothing that can stop you from being successful but you. If your mind is set on success, you'll be successful. Now let's deal with the mindset. That's the best advice I could. Deal with your mindset. If externally you are saying and acting like you're successful, but that internal conversation is something that is unhealthy, you'll never be successful. And we deal with mindset in our program. The first hour or so of every morning is strictly dealing with the mindset, because success is a mindset principle. When you believe it, you'll achieve it. Now I have to teach you what that belief system looks like. I have to teach you the principles and the laws that govern success so that you can align yourself with success, because it will not align itself with something that does not represent it. So what are you representing? And it's doing the work from the inside. So all this external stuff people go through trying to fool people that they have it all laid out, it's very evident they don't. Because successful people don't show it. The wealthiest of people don't wear it. And people who do more external things are less likely to be the real successful people in the room. And so when success presents itself, you've got to be attractive to it. Are you attractive to success? And it will stand there and judge you and determine, are you somebody it will take on the next leg of the journey?
I used to tell my employees, attitude is everything. Like, you can't control what happens sometimes, you can't control what others do, and even internally sometimes, the only thing that you can always control is your attitude. And so attitude is everything. And it's mindset, yeah, absolutely.
A mindset towards success is everything.
If you could implement one policy to change, one policy change to support Black entrepreneurs nationwide, what would it be?
Well, most people don't know that the federal government gives foreigners that come into the country a $500,000 loan to start their businesses. Yeah. $500,000 loan for them to come into America and start a business. And they do not pay taxes for the first 5 years. No personal income tax while they're earning all of that money. That's reparations. Yeah. Give me what you give others, even the score. Make the playing field equal, and we too will be successful.
All right, I ask all my guests this question, so I'm anxious to hear your answer. So what's the craziest idea, or I'll say it this way, what's the dumbest idea you've ever had that people said don't, that turned out to be successful?
I don't do dumb stuff, so.
Fair.
I'm too calculating and strategic to do things that don't make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So nobody's ever said, Dr. Watson, don't do that, don't do that.
No.
All right.
I'm,
Look at you go, yeah.
I'm very calculating. I'm very strategic. I'll calculate it out myself, and I'll say it's dumb before anybody gets the opportunity.
All right, what's the one thing then that you thought was the worst idea you've ever had that turned out to work?
Well, I don't foster bad ideas.
Okay.
I'm
not
serious.
going to get her on this one, am I? I'm not.
No,
It's not going to happen. I can
I
ask this question 4 or 5 different ways, I think, and it's not going to happen.
I believe that infinite intelligence does its job very well. And when we live by allowing infinite intelligence to guide and lead our lives, he will lead and guide you into truth. And as long as you're walking and living in truth, you'll walk into things you never thought you would see in this lifetime. And I've lived that pathway. Yeah. So I don't even entertain foolish things. I have way too much on my plate. And I want to tell you the secrets of mindset development. Everything that I'm living through right now is strictly because of the commitment to develop my mindset. None of the things that have happened would have happened in my life if I had not been very serious about my own internal mind, my subconscious mind, the conversations I have with myself. What is the undergirding? Am I operating in fear? Am I operating with a poverty mindset? Am I operating in dread and regret? Those are the things that stagnate our success journey. I have been extremely intentional to clean out my own gutter, wipe it clean. Get all of that stuff out of my mind that is telling me opposite of who I was created to be. I believe entrepreneurs are born. I believe it is a gift that we've been given. I believe it is a calling that's on our life, because you are to bring something into the marketplace that is going to impact the lives of other people. And when we do it well, the byproduct of that is wealth. Not everybody has that ability. This is a superpower we've been given to bring things to the marketplace, to change a community with our gift, our talent, our abilities. This is powerful. It's not happenstance. You didn't just wake up one day and decide to be an entrepreneur. Your life was already aligned. Your DNA has been pre-coded and wired for you to be an entrepreneur and for you to operate in levels of risk that other people would just pass out over, the things that you are not afraid to do. Can you imagine not going to a job and not seeing a paycheck in your bank account every week or every 2 weeks and being okay with that? Yeah. That's an entrepreneur. Having a vision for something that doesn't exist. You have been given an ability in your own mindset to see it in its full existence. And now you have the ability to walk it out. That is powerful. We are not average people. And oftentimes we are that odd man out that doesn't fit in with anybody or anywhere. And that's why the mastermind group is so important, because everybody in there is rolled a certain kind of way.
Right,
and we don't fit in everywhere.
Right.
And in this group, we all fit in.
You got to find your people, yeah.
We are the people. And it is an amazing thing to be an entrepreneur today. With every tool and resource that's available, you can be anybody you choose to be if you just choose.
Well, I got to say, so we always talk about entrepreneurship is hard. And we all, you like to hear that it's a lonely journey and it's hard. And I am here to tell you that after decades of doing this, those who support the entrepreneurs are undervalued. So I just want to say thank you for the support that you've given to entrepreneurs in the city, and love what you're doing. Thank you for coming and sharing your story and sharing your perspective with us. I truly appreciate that. And let us know how we can continue to help what you're doing, help it grow, and help grow the impact.
Thank you for having me here, and I appreciate what you're doing as well. I am excited to see people care about entrepreneurs, and we're at a time when entrepreneurs were not important, but now they are. So thank you for what you do.
Oh, thank you. Where can people find you? How can people help?
We are at 1121 North 5th Street in Kansas City, Kansas. It is the former Gateway Plaza that will soon be a sign-up saying the Legacy Park Plaza. And this is my thing. Anybody in here know anybody that's got $1 million? Have them call me. We can use it, and we'll put it to great use. Training, teaching, developing, coaching, mentoring entrepreneurs. I need 3 of those, so send me your people real quick.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you again. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right, you back. Give her a hand, everybody.